All right, so we have Gino sending text messages, and if you like, you could change this to your name so that it would be you. Personalize it. That's okay. So he sent text messages, and he sent less than 35 texts yesterday. Yes, I know some of you send way more than that, so this number seems small and insignificant. It's just for the purpose of the example. So we, one, are going to need to be able to graph this, and then two, we are going to be able to actually write the inequality that we used the steps from the previous video. So one, identify what's being compared. Text messages are being compared because that's what he did. He sent text messages. Two, the relevant variable. So text messages are what's being sent. A relevant variable, well, you could do T or M depending upon how you feel. I'm going to use T for text messages. You could use M, like I said. And then I need to actually write the inequality showing the comparison. So for this, there were 35 that were sent initially, or sent in the problem, I should state there. And so he sent less than 35. So 35 is going to be the maximum value of the messages that were sent. So therefore, anything that is less than 35 texts could complete that inequality. So then that says 35 is greater than T. Likewise, you could also write that the T is less than 35. Either of these are equivalent statements, but the point of it is that 35 is the maximum number in this comparison. With that said, we can do the number line. Like I stated before, you're going to do the chunk of the number line that's significant. On your assignment, I think they give you the chunks of the number line you need. That's an indicator whether or not you've solved an inequality correctly. However, if you have to make an inequality, you go ahead and do the part you need. 35 is not included in this because he sent less than 35. So that's going to be an open circle because it's not included. And then any value that is below 35 can be included. So I'm going to draw a line again on that graph, and I'm going to draw the ray so that it indicates the values all going that direction. All right, so then the next thing you'll be asked to do is that you can identify whether or not inequalities are true or false based upon finding solutions for them. And what that means is that typically you're going to be given an inequality, and we're going to treat inequalities like we do equations for solving them. So any of our not substitution properties, but we can use the substitution properties. So yes, it also. And any of our properties of equality can be used and modeled for this situation. So you're going to have an inequality where 2t, or the product of 2t and 8, is greater than 7, or the sum of 2t and 8, or the multitude of ways that can be said. And what you'll do is typically they're going to separate it with some kind of punctuation so that you know that you are going to find out whether or not this is a true or false statement by using the substitution property, where the variable now gives you a value of being equivalent to 1. So use the substitution property of equality, replace that into the variable's location, and we are going to see, is this true that that value is indeed greater than 7? So that gives me the -2 plus 8, and so this gives me a positive 6 greater than 7. And is that greater than 7? Well, the last time I checked, that's counting up from 6, 7. I'm just going to make that an ink blob, so ignore that. So 6 is not. So this statement is a false statement when that value of t is used, okay? These types where you are finding if they are true or false require you evidencing work showing that substitution property of equality, like we say. So make sure that when you're showing these that you show work that looks somewhat similar to all of that work that's over there. It didn't really take as long to write it as it did for me to actually verbalize components of it. All right, so next you are going to take another inequality. We're going to have p minus 42 is less than or equivalent to -2, where they are going to state that the value of p is going to be equivalent to 40. You need to identify if this is a true or false statement because those are the directions we're given here. So what we do, again, is we replace the variable in this inequality with the value that we've been given for the variable. So we can say 40, substitution property of equality, minus 42, is that indeed less than or equivalent to negative 2? And so what that gives me is 40 minus 42, so it's like I need $2 more, basically. So I'm going to borrow some, and is that equivalent to it? Yes. So this inequality is definitely a true statement when the value is equivalent to 40. Finally, just some key points for you to remember regarding graphing, number lines, and inequalities. Okay, so basically some graphing friendly to-dos. Graphing inequalities is what this is called. Please remember that the number line itself that you are plotting the dots on has arrows at both ends. It's not just a line segment, it's indicating that the value is going on and on each side, negative and positively, infinitely. Secondly, when you have to actually draw this yourself and it's not given to you on a paper or electronically, you need to make sure that the increments are evenly spaced. Now, evenly spaced increments don't do you any good if you do not make sure that they have meaningful values. Again, I do not want to write numbers all the way up to 100 if my value is going to be equivalent, or if I'm checking to see if my inequality exceeds 100. So I don't want to write 100. So I want to make sure that those values are meaningful to the part we are using. Next, make sure you label the increments. Those values need to be labeled. So say this is the part of the number line that I've got that's 0. So I've got 0 here, and then I've got 1, 2, and 3, -1, -2, and -3. So I'm going to make sure that those increments are also labeled. Okay? And the graph of the solutions. So when you see that an inequality with your comparison and you are graphing that solution, it must be on the number line. So let's say that, you know, the value is equivalent to -1 and every graph value less than. See how that's on that number line? Make sure that it's on that number line. Okay, don't do it above, don't do a curve or an arc. Make sure that it is on the line itself, okay? And by what I mean by curve or arc is some people have done this before where they, oops, that's -1, plot it, and then they do this random thing. Don't do that. That's not indicating the number value. That's just getting crazy. So don't be crazy. You know, keep it neat, keep it simple. It's not the time to be creative when it comes to math right now. All right, so that concludes inequalities, graphing inequalities, and saying if a solution for a variable is true or false using the substitution property of equality.